You're listening to Barske Studio TrueCrime. The story you're about to hear is just one of many hidden in the shadows of Nordic history, based on true events. No emotions, no bias, just facts.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are immersing ourselves in one of Norway's most painful and frankly complex unsolved mysteries, the Marianne case.
That's right. We're talking about Marianne Saken. It's the disappearance of 6-year-old Marianne Rugas Knudsen back in 1981.
And our mission here is to, well, take you through the official record of this cold case. We want to analyze the timeline, look at the intense search efforts, and discuss the suspects who were investigated over the years.
Exactly. And it's such a crucial case study, really, for understanding what happens when a child vanishes completely, when the police are faced almost immediately with this near total absence of evidence.
Yeah, it's chilling. And the single fact that just hangs over this entire mystery is this. Marianne disappeared on August 28th, 1981, from the small town of Risør.
And despite a search that was massive, immediate, covering everything from, forest to the sea.
Nothing.
No concrete trace of the child, no designated crime scene, and tragically, no body has ever been found. The investigation essentially started and continued in this unnerving void.
Okay, so let's start right at the beginning. Let's detail those moments just before she vanished. Friday, August 28, 1981. By all accounts, a totally ordinary afternoon.
Right. Marianne had just started first grade. She was only 6 years old, barefoot, wearing a summer dress. Just picture it.
And her last known sort of activity was collecting empty soda bottles from a vocational school nearby.
Yeah, exactly. Trying to earn a little pocket money, for treats. She then went to Fridendal Varehandel, that's the local store.
Redeemed the bottles, bought some candy, some ice cream.
Yes, but what makes the timeline so frustratingly precise, and you really need to grasp this, is that the sources confirm she actually visited the store twice.
Twice, within half an hour.
Within about a half-hour span, yeah. On her second visit, around 2:45 p.m., that's 14:45, she finished her purchases. 2 bags of candy and 2 krones. Those are common ice cream cones in Norway.
She walked out of the store. And that's it. That's the final confirmed sighting of Marianne.
And this is where the speed of the initial reaction is so important for you, the listener, to understand the immediate context. Her mother reported her missing just 3 hours later.
That doesn't sound like a long time at all.
No, it wasn't a delayed response. The alarm bells went off straight away because, her routine was broken. Something was clearly wrong.
So what did that immediate alarm trigger on the ground? What happened next?
It triggered this huge coordinated response that very same evening. We're talking police, the Red Cross, hundreds of local volunteers combing the area.
Land and sea?
Land and sea. They even brought in a helicopter with thermal cameras, which, remember, was pretty advanced technology for Norway back in 1981. They were desperately searching for any clue, any sign of maybe an accident, a fall, anything.
But the results were?
Baffling.
Yeah.
Just nothing.
Yeah.
The void, as you said earlier.
Yeah.
Despite that really intense sweep. There's no sign of a struggle, no dropped candy bag, no discarded item, no definitive crime scene. They were looking for something concrete, and all they found was air.
Okay, so given that complete absence of physical evidence, the speed with which the police then shifted their thinking is quite telling, isn't it?
Absolutely. By September 1st, that's just 4 days after she disappeared, the police were already signaling they believed they were dealing with a serious crime.
And the next day, it was official. Classified as a criminal action.
Correct. That classification essentially meant the lack of evidence of an accident was itself becoming evidence of foul play. Their primary working hypothesis, developed quite early on, was grim.
Abduction.
Yes, that Marianne was abducted by someone driving a car, probably near that store, Fridendal Varehandel, driven away from Risør, and then subsequently murdered.
So that hypothesis changes everything. They weren't just searching for a lost little girl anymore. They were hunting for a perpetrator who took her, potentially in broad daylight.
Precisely. And that dictated the kind of resources they needed.
So what kind of resources were thrown at finding this, well, invisible perpetrator?
Well, for a regional case like this, they were substantial. At the investigation's peak, there were 15 investigators working full-time in Risør.
15?
And they were supported by 8 specialized tracking dogs. It was a massive commitment trying to exhaust every single possibility.
How long did that intense organized search last?
The official large-scale organized search was concluded on September 7th. But that was only after they had systematically checked every culvert, every conceivable hiding spot in the area.
Grim process.
Incredibly grim, methodical. It shows they'd essentially, by that point, given up hope of finding her alive nearby.
And this is where the lack of conventional leads forces investigators down some, shall we say, less conventional paths. The sources mention consulting clairvoyants.
They did. And that fact, maybe more than anything else, highlights the desperation. When you have seasoned police investigators turning to psychics for geographical leads.
It tells you how few real leads they had.
Exactly. It signals this profound lack of any concrete direction. They also chased down tips about a possible sighting of a girl who looked like Marianne alone in Christiansand.
Did that lead anywhere?
No. Like everything else, it led to a dead end. Every lead, whether it was conventional police work or, these more desperate measures, just fizzled out. It really underscores how that lack of hard evidence was crippling the entire effort right from day one.
That kind of pressure, the public pressure, the internal pressure to find answers, especially when a child is involved, it inevitably leads to suspicion falling on people, sometimes wrongly.
Oh, absolutely. And the early investigation phase saw exactly that. Let's look at the suspects. In October 1981, so just a couple of months after the disappearance, a man in his 50s from the nearby town of Vegårshei was arrested.
Arrested and held.
Yes, and held in custody for a really quite alarmingly long time, over 8 months, right up until June of 1982.
8 months without charge.
Well, held on suspicion. In pretrial detention, effectively. This lengthy period shows just how convinced the police must have been at the time that they had the right person.
But he was eventually released?
He was. Released, and any potential charges were dropped.
Why? What changed after 8 months?
It came down to the same core problem that plagued the whole investigation, a lack of technical evidence. They simply couldn't link him definitively to the crime.
So suspicion wasn't enough? Circumstance wasn't enough?
No. Without that critical physical proof,
Yeah.
that forensic link, the case against him just collapsed. The legal cost of holding someone that long is one thing, but the personal cost, the social cost for that individual, it's immeasurable.
And there's another layer to this early files, a really profound and painful detail that just illustrates the kind of pressure cooker environment that investigation was operating in.
Yes, it's incredibly sensitive. The sources reveal that the circle of suspicion spread so wide that it actually, for a time, enveloped Marianne's own immediate family.
The victim's family.
Indeed. Marianne's own father spoke out about it in later interviews. He revealed that he himself had been monitored by the police and was, for a period, mistakenly treated as a suspect.
That's unimaginable.
It is. And for you, the listener, this detail is so crucial. It shows the depth of the initial panic and desperation. When the police feel forced to consider the parents, the people suffering the most intense grief.
It just underscores the massive societal pressure they were under to solve it and the complete lack of any other viable leads at that time.
Exactly. It paints a picture of the profound tragedy and the almost chaotic complexity of that initial phase of the investigation.
Okay, so the initial investigation hits these dead ends, includes these painful moments, but the case itself never really went cold for the Norwegian authorities, did it?
No, not entirely. Kripos, which is Norway's National Criminal Investigation Service, sort of like their FBI or National Crime Agency, they actually reopened the case multiple times in the 1990s.
When was that?
Specifically, records show reviews or reopenings in 1993, again in 1994, and then a significant one in 1998. That last one was triggered by a major development, something that came from outside Norway.
Ah, and this involves the Thomas Quick confession?
Precisely. This was the highly controversial confession of Thomas Quick, the Swedish serial killer. His real name, as many now know, is Sture Bergwall. In 1998, Quick confessed he claimed he'd kidnapped and murdered Marianne Rygasnidsen.
He was already notorious by then, right? Confessing to numerous other murders across Scandinavia.
Oh, absolutely. Including, famously, the disappearance of another Norwegian child, Therese Johannessen. His confessions were headline news.
So here we are, nearly 2 decades after Marianne vanished, and suddenly this potential answer emerges, however gruesome it might be. How did the Norwegian police react? And maybe more importantly, how did Marianne's family react?
Well, despite the huge profile of Quick and his confessions, the reaction in Norway, both from the police handling the Marianne case and from her family, was one of immediate skepticism.
Really? They didn't believe him?
No. There were apparently significant discrepancies in his story. Crucial details he provided just didn't align with the few known facts of Marianne's disappearance. They'd spent, almost 20 years chasing shadows, and this confession felt similarly elusive, unreliable.
So the police didn't actively pursue his confession as a strong lead.
They investigated it, certainly, but they formally decided to shelve the quick lead in 2002. And that decision proved to be remarkably prescient,
How so?
because years later, the whole narrative around Thomas Quick collapsed. In 2008, Quick himself formally withdrew his confession regarding Marianne.
And he withdrew others, too, didn't he? He was acquitted of several murders he'd previously been convicted of based on those confessions.
That's exactly right. He was later acquitted of a number of those other murders. The entire Quick saga serves as this really stark, textbook example of the dangers of false confessions, especially in high-profile cold cases.
How they can just derail investigations.
Completely. Diverting focus, draining resources, and cruelly offering this kind of illusory closure to families. It was a tragic subplot that ultimately consumed years of investigative time and public attention, leading nowhere in Marianne's case.
Right. So Quick was a dead end. This brings us, inevitably, to the legal endpoint of the case itself. On August 28, 2006.
Yes, a significant date. Exactly 25 years to the day after Marianne was last seen walking out of that convenience store.
The case became legally foreclosed.
Correct. That's the definitive legal conclusion under Norwegian law at the time. The statute of limitations for the crime, likely murder or abduction leading to death, had passed.
And the implication of that is stark, isn't it?
It's crystal clear. For you, the listener, it means this. Even if the perpetrator were identified today, conclusively, they could not be prosecuted for the crime. Legal finality arrived on that date, but of course, emotional closure did not.
No, and yet the search for truth, for answers, it just continued, didn't it? Often fueled by public hope and private determination. We saw a really dramatic example of this in 2016.
Yes, the incident with the claimed clairvoyant, Michael Winger. He released a video, didn't he, claiming he knew who did it and where Marianne's remains were located.
Yes, and it caused quite a stir.
It really demonstrated the enduring societal trauma surrounding this case. That one video, based on, well, psychic claims, triggered a massive renewed search effort. Over 100 people mobilized, searching an area outside reserve based on his information.
And the result.
Sadly, it echoed the frustrating results from decades earlier. The search was completely fruitless, no discoveries were made. The video was later removed, and it just became another chapter in that cycle of false hope, followed by renewed despair for everyone involved.
And there's one more sort of official push, wasn't there, in 2017, led by a private investigator.
Yes, that was Greet Strime. She formally petitioned the authorities, arguing that the original police investigation from the 80s contained identifiable errors, and crucially, that some interrogations were incomplete or not followed up properly.
So she believed there were still avenues to explore within the original files.
That was her argument, yes. Based on reviewing decades of documentation, suggesting that perhaps fresh eyes could find overlooked details or connections. It was a compelling case she made.
But the police response?
The Agder Police District officially denied the request to reopen the case. They essentially chose to stand by the legal finality achieved back in 2006 with the statute of limitations.
So legally, the door remains closed.
Legally, yes. Despite this, though, the story remains incredibly potent culturally in Norway. There was the 1996 book Marianne, written by her mother, Torunn Rugas. And more recently, the family participated quite extensively in the 2020 true crime documentary series Mystery of Marianne, The Marianne Mystery.
Their participation is significant.
Very. It shows that for the family, the search for truth, for some kind of understanding, transcends any legal time limits.
So if we try to connect all these threads together now, 40 years of searching, suspecting, hoping, what does the Marianne case ultimately teach us about these kinds of unsolved crimes?
I think fundamentally it illustrates the devastating difficulty investigators face when an investigation is defined by a vacuum, right from the start. The police efforts here were enormous. You had the dogs, the helicopters back in '81, the manpower, the repeated reviews.
Everything but that one crucial piece of evidence.
Exactly. Without that single piece of technical evidence, that fingerprint, that fiber, that witness testimony that holds up, they were constantly forced into these painful detours. From, scrutinizing the grieving family members themselves to chasing false confessions from notorious serial killers years later.
It feels like grasping at straws in the dark.
It does. And it shows that in cases of suspected abduction without witnesses, the legal system often reaches its endpoint. Its point of finality was statutes of limitation, long before the very human need for certainty for answers is satisfied.
And the tragedy here is compounded by that enduring paradox, isn't it? The central theory involves a car abduction right outside a busy local shop middle of the afternoon.
Broad daylight.
Yet the abductor and Marianne were seemingly just swallowed by the void, leaving absolutely no identifying trace behind. The statute of limitations brought that hard legal closure in 2006.
But as you mentioned, the family's participation in that major documentary series fully 14 years after the case was legally closed.
It strongly suggests that the search for truth is maybe an obligation, a need that operates entirely outside the legal system's timelines.
Absolutely. Which leads us to the final thought for you, our listener. How does that concept, the legal concept of foreclosure, of a statute of limitations ending prosecution, how does that sit alongside the absolute, agonizing human necessity for certainty in a case like this, an unresolved criminal act involving a child?
That's the profound, ongoing question, isn't it? The one that remains wide open in the Marianne stake.
Thank you for listening to Barske Studio TrueCrime. The story you've heard is just one of many hidden in the shadows of Nordic history. We release new episodes every week, exploring fresh true stories, from haunting mysteries to chilling crimes. Subscribe and join us next week as we uncover another untold truth. This was Barske Studio TrueCrime, told by AI with no emotion and no filter.